Alright, what is going on, people of the internet, and welcome to How to Fix the Scorpion. Now, the Scorpion has been in Ark for a very long time, since release actually, and I always used to use it for taming things back in the first playthrough that I ever had of Ark, but it's not good at that anymore. It's not good enough. It's been completely abandoned by the Ark devs. We've had 2 TLC patches and still no fixes for this little guy. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking it down into 3 parts, what we need to do to fix this Scorpion. The first part is going to be the problems. It's going to be the numbers, and believe me, I was outstanded with what is wrong with this Scorpion when it's compared to other things used to knock out and tame things. The second part is going to be about comments. This is suggestions that I have from all of you guys, or stuff from myself, or anything. And the final thing is going to be about closing thoughts. This is going to be talking about why we shouldn't have to be afraid of buffing the Scorpion, things that we need to take into consideration, and things that we can expect going forwards. To make sure that I have your attention, in this video, I will mathematically prove to you that a Scorpion at 4,000% melee damage is still inferior to an Equus boasting 300% melee damage in terms of knocking out creatures. To start this video off, I want to talk about 2 key terms that I'll be using throughout this video. The first of which is torpor per second. This is going to take a look at how much torpor is dealt over a certain period of time and then divide that based on how long it takes. So let's say that the Scorpion will do 450 torpor over a 10-second period. That means that its torpor per second is 45. The second term we're going to be discussing is the torpor to damage ratio. That's going to be telling you how likely you are to kill something. So for example, a Gallimimus has a very low HP but relatively medium torpor, which means that you have to be very careful with what you use to knock it out, which is why you can't knock out Gallimimus with a crossbow most of the time, because it will deal so much damage that you will not be able to knock it out in the time frame that you have. The torpor to damage ratio for a Scorpion is 3 torpor for every point of damage inflicted. For a crossbow using tranq darts, it's 4.5 torpor for every damage inflicted. For a tranquilizer dart, it is 8.5 torpor for every point of damage inflicted, and for a shocking tranquilizer dart, it is 17 torpor for every point of damage inflicted. To start, I'm going to talk about the Scorpion's biggest problem. Now that is its torpor per second. Where an Equus will deal all of its torpor instantly. That means as soon as you use your right click on the Equus and you hit something in the head or you hit something with the hooves, it will deal all of its torpor in a split second. A crossbow will deal about 40% of its torpor with the initial arrow impact and the remaining 60% over the next 5 seconds. I haven't calculated that, I was just kind of ballparking it, so those aren't actual numbers, but that's about what it looks like. The Scorpion, on the other hand, will deal all of its torpor slowly over a 10-second time period. There's no upfront torpor, and it does not stack. So if you hit something 10 times in 10 seconds, doesn't matter, it will only count it as one hit. What's really quite terrifying about this is that at 1,000% melee damage, which is impossible to get on a Scorpion on official rates, but at 1,000% melee damage, the Scorpion will inflict 450 torpor over the course of a 10-second time frame. That means it is at 45 torpor per second at 1,000% melee damage. Without anything to compare it to, this number is a bit arbitrary and meaningless, but for frame of reference, I took a look at a 300% melee damage Equus. Every time the Equus hits a right click, while at 300% melee damage, it will deal 115 torpor. It can do this attack 1.6 times a second, and over a 10-second time frame, we have the equation of 115 torpor times 1.6 times a second times 10 seconds. Now remember, over this time frame, the 1,000% Scorpion will deal 450 torpor. However, the Equus will deal 1,840 torpor, which means that the Scorpion at 1,000% melee damage has a torpor per second of 45, and an Equus has a torpor per second of 184, meaning that at 1,000% melee damage, the Scorpion is 4 times slower than knocking something out as a 300% melee damage Equus. I'm going to repeat that. A 300% melee damage Equus is 4 times faster at knocking things out than a 1,000% melee damage Scorpion. If you don't see a problem here, then I honestly don't know what to tell you. Upon further testing, I took a look at what you would really need to combat a 300% melee damage Equus. Now, a Scorpion will do 15 damage with a single sting. Remember, our torpor per damage ratio is 3 to 1. So 15 damage per sting is 45 torpor at base 100% melee damage. I spawned in a scorpion and set it to 4000% melee damage and hit something, and over a 10-second time frame it dealt exactly 1800 torpor. That means that in order to almost come close to a 300% melee damage Equus, keep in mind the Equus had 1840 torpor over a 10-second time frame, the Scorpion would need to be over 4000% melee damage. Here is a direct comparison between the Scorpion and the Equus. The Equus at 300% melee damage and the Scorpion at 4000% melee damage in their attempts to inflict torpor on an enemy. This test could have been improved by using a macro on the horse rather than leaving it up to a human hand, and it also could have been a little bit easier to display the results had we used an exact same level Bronto for both tests, but you understand the idea. The horse at 300% melee damage and the Scorpion at 4000 rather is very similar. Unfortunately for the Scorpion, its problems don't end here. The second thing we have to talk about is the torpor per damage ratio. Now, if you remember from earlier, the crossbow will deal 4.5 torpor for every 1 point of damage you do with it. The Scorpion, on the other hand, will only deal 3 torpor for every point of damage inflicted with it. That means that if a target has 300 health and 900 torpor, the Scorpion will kill it at the same attack that would otherwise knock it out. That would take about 20 shots to knock out 100% melee damage. 40 torpor per hit, 15 damage per hit times 20 equals 300 damage, as well as 900 torpor. A crossbow, on the other hand, at 100% melee damage will inflict 157.5 torpor in a 5-second time frame. Time frame doesn't matter, it just deals 157.5 torpor and it will only deal 35 damage. That means that it will take about 6 shots in order to knock out that target that would otherwise be killed by the Scorpion at 900 torpor and 300 health, and the crossbow would only deal about 210 damage, as 6 shots times 35 damage equals 210. So the Scorpion will kill the target that has 300 HP and 900 torpor. The crossbow will knock it out on about 90 HP left. This is all fine and good. It can be worse than the crossbow. It is perfectly acceptable for it to be worse than the crossbow. The problem lies again with the Equus. I did some testing, and at 300% melee damage, the Equus will deal 115 torpor, and it will do about 33 damage. By the way, your torpor per damage ratio will not improve with higher melee damage, and it will not get worse with lower melee damage. It will always remain the exact same. A Scorpion with 100% melee damage and 1000% melee damage will both have a 3 to 1 torpor per damage ratio. These two are directly correlated. Now, with that in mind, the Equus's damage to torpor ratio is 1 damage equals 3.48 torpor, which means that it is still better than the Scorpion. Putting this into perspective, a highly evolved trank machine that the Scorpion is less efficient at knocking things out without killing them than a horse kicking something in the head. With this, we can only conclude that a 4000% melee damage Scorpion is inferior to a 300% melee damage Equus in every way imaginable. Whew. Alright, take a breath. That's what disappointment feels like. We're going to move on now, and we're going to be talking about something a little bit brighter, which is the comments and the suggestions that people have left on previous videos of mine that we're going to be looking at and seeing if maybe these would be effective ways of buffing the Scorpion so that we could finally get use out of this guy again. The first suggestion comes courtesy of Sonia Floyd, who says that we should make the Scorpion a bit bigger, give it the ability to carry small creatures, and to basically kind of make a new one in the sense that we kind of have to drop the old kit and bring in a new one. It should have 2 attacks, break up the old ones. Right now the Scorpion only has a left click attack. It will either play the animation for its pincers or its tail. None of these do anything different than the other ones. There's no difference whatsoever. So make it have 2 different attacks. A left click one that does a standard hit and a right click one that does torpor with a torpor buff added to it, please. Big thing here is also to make the scorpions breedable. Of course, we still don't have that. The ARC devs did say they were going to start working on insect breeding, but this was almost a year ago, and since when we have heard absolutely nothing about it. The second suggestion is to give the scorpion a bit of natural armor. This comes courtesy of Bone Dragon 1300, who basically says that it would give the scorpion a lot back if you could just give it a bit more natural armor and make it have the ability to grab creatures or a player or have a slow effect. Now, I think that the big thing to take away from this is the natural armor. The scorpion doesn't deal a lot of torpor per second. We've already proven that. So it needs to either be able to run away or outlast whatever you're trying to knock out while it is trying to hit you. Obviously, the scorpion isn't that fast, and if you're going to be focused on using it to knock things out, you're probably not going to be leveling a lot into movement speed. You're going to be more looking at melee damage. So a bit of natural armor will help the scorpion outlast whatever you're fighting in order to knock it out in the time frame that you will need with its very slow torpor per second. So if you're trying to knock out a trike, a bit of natural armor will help the scorpion survive longer in that sort of situation. The third suggestion comes from Red Cube, which is to give the scorpion a sort of player-controlled buff to its sting. There's a lot in this comment, and it's far more to ever go over in this kind of video. And some of the suggestions in here don't really make a whole lot of sense, but I really appreciate the enthusiasm. Anyway, what Red Cube basically says in here somewhere is that it would be interesting to apply different types of poison to the scorpion. Now, while I think this might not be such a great thing in Arc, because the scorpion already has problems knocking things out, you're not going to be wanting to chase it around to try and stimulate it, or whatever type of poison that you could craft up for the scorpion. I think it would be a good idea, and I mulled over this a little bit with one of my admins, Butterman2001, who came up with the idea that it would be cool to sort of put narcotic in the scorpion's inventory and have that act as kind of a bonus damage to your sting. We sort of looked at this idea and formulated it a little bit more, and we settled upon it would be a really awesome and really cool buff if they made it so that the scorpion had, let's say, a maximum of 10 narcotic in its inventory at all times, but when you stung something with that amount of narcotic in your inventory, it would deal all of that torpor to your target instantly. So let's say you have 10 narcotic, that's equal to 500 torpor. A scorpion stings something, it will deal 500 torpor instantly and then deal however much damage the scorpion would do afterwards. So at 1000% melee damage, it would deal another 450 torpor over the next 10-second time frame. This would give it the upfront damage that a crossbow has, while also keeping true to the scorpion, and it would not buff the wild scorpion in any way at all. It would make it so that they weren't going out and killing more players. It wouldn't give the wild scorpions a buff in the slightest, but it would reward players for working on their scorpions and farming and equipping it with a higher level of poison. I thought that was a really, really cool idea. The final suggestion comes courtesy of Beast, who says it would be interesting to give the scorpions a charge meter for their sting. I think this would be really cool, similar to how the trike has its right-click hold down where you just drag your hoof along the ground before it charges forward, knocks down the trees, and stuns enemies in its path. The scorpion could kind of hold down its right-click, charge up its sting a little bit, and then when it hits something, it deals a bonus to its torpor, or maybe has secondary attacks so that you could stun something or slow something down, or what Beast references here is something like a heat stroke. And I think that would be a really cool idea for the scorpion. It would certainly be a bit difficult to kind of balance in the sense that, do you let the scorpion move while it's charging up? Do you make the charge really long? Do you make it short? But I think it's a great selling point and a good talking point for this. In conclusion, we shouldn't be afraid of buffing the scorpion. Earlier in this video I spoke about the fact that it was perfectly acceptable that the scorpion wasn't competitive with the crossbow. But what's honestly wrong with that? There's no shame in having a dinosaur compete with a metal tier tool. In fact, dinosaurs in this game kind of have a history of doing it. An ankylosaurus will harvest metal better than a metal pickaxe will, and a beaver will harvest wood better than a metal hatchet will. I didn't go over this earlier, but if you had a crossbow that was at 143% damage, which isn't very hard to get, by the way, and you shot something with it with a trank arrow, it would deal 225.225 torpor with a single shot over a 5-second time frame. Divide this by the 5 seconds that it takes to inflict this amount of torpor, and you get a torpor per second of 45.045 torpor per second, which means that you only need a 143% damage crossbow in order to beat a 1000% damage scorpion in torpor per second. Furthermore, it's not like the crossbow could ever truly be outdated by the scorpion, as it will still have its own unique perks built into its kit that the scorpion will never be able to take away from it. The crossbow is ranged, so it's far safer. You'd never take a scorpion up to a giga and start to knock it out, but a crossbow is perfectly fine for that. And the crossbow will deal bonus damage This is because the crossbow can still headshot creatures and it has a passive bonus to flyers. So it will still be far better at knocking out creatures that can fly, especially due to the fact that the scorpion can't fly after them. I spent a lot of time in this video talking about the Equus, and the goal really isn't to have the scorpion outshine the Equus in every way possible. That's not going to solve anything. You know, if the scorpion just gets a buff in every way possible and just completely outshines the Equus, then I'm going to have to come back in 6 months and make this video again, but about the Equus this time. And that's not going to solve anything. There's a constant theme in Ark where creatures come out and then a year later a new one comes out and they completely outshine the original and we just completely forget about it. And that needs to stop. We need to start taking a look at what the scorpion is and giving something that it can be unique to it, where it can excel in one situation. But then the Equus is perfectly fine in a different one. And that's good, because that's what suits the Equus. And then this other situation is what suits the scorpion. At bare minimum, the scorpion needs to be breedable. I don't know why it isn't the case yet. It's completely inexcusable. And it should have been in the game before you could ever call Ark officially released. But I really am just hoping that one day I can leave my base with the intentions of going and taming a scorpion for a specific purpose, rather than just accidentally knocking it out and taming it just 'cause. Thanks for watching. Peace.